Now, for the next 7 weeks, we're going to take a look at how we experience God within our family dynamics. It's a family life series, working with the theme Family Matters. Everybody comes from a family, right? Nobody made themselves. Somebody else made you. All right, so you can relate to that. We all have some kind of background. We all have some kind of family that we come from. We all have some family issues. That's just part of life. So let's just jump right into it. And as we approach our text today, let me just give you some background. We're looking at an occasion where Jesus is preaching. He had just, according to the Gospel of Mark, he had just called the 12, the apostles, to him, designated them apostles, and he just given them their assignments. And as he's teaching, a crowd is forming around him. He's at the house. If you read the English Standard Version, he's at his house, but he's teaching, and the crowd is forming. In Mark 3, beginning at verse 20, tells us, "Then the multitude came together again so that they could not so much as eat bread. But when his own people," that is his family, "heard about this, they went out to lay hold of him, for they said, 'He is out of his mind.'" This is Jesus' family talking about Jesus here. What a witness, huh? He's out of his mind. So the text continues, and he's teaching about a house divided, and he's teaching about the unpardonable sin. But if you drop down to verse 31, the text says, "Then his brothers and his mother came." By the way, when you see brothers, it could be brothers and sisters. You say, where'd you get that from? Well, in Greek-based languages and Latin-based languages, even today, when you refer to brothers and sisters, you don't say siblings, you simply say brothers. So if you take Spanish class, brothers can refer to just brothers or to brothers and sisters. All right, that was free. That one was free. You don't have to give a special offering for that one, okay? And his brothers and his mother came, and standing outside, they sent to him, calling him. And a multitude was sitting around him, and they said to him, "Look, your mother and your brothers are outside seeking you." But he answered them, saying, "Who is my mother or my brothers?" And he looked around in a circle at those who sat about him and said, "Here, right here, here are my mother. Are my mother." Yes, that subject-verb agreement isn't working out there, but he said, "Here are my mother and my brothers. For whoever does the will of God is my brother and my sister and mother." Do you detect anything weird about this passage? Jesus' family actually thought he lost his mind. The same mother who had launched his ministry at Cana, at the wedding in Cana, is now engaged in a mental health intervention for Jesus. What is that all about? See, in Cana, Jesus had no intention to intervene. That was not his desire to turn water into wine. At least not the way his mother wanted him to do it. Go back to John chapter 2. You look right there in the passage, and what is Jesus' response to his mother? He says, "Woman, what does your concern have to do with me? My hour has not yet come." If you look in the Greek, it sounds more like, "Woman, what is that to you and to me?" Okay, that's just how Greek writes. But he's saying, "Mom, this has nothing to do with me. Keep me out of it, please." What is her response? She turns away from him, looks at the servant, and says, "Do whatever he said," and she walks away. Well, we presume she walks away. All right? That's kind of a serious setup right there. It hints of some parental manipulation, if you ask me. It's obviously not a balanced relationship between two adults. In fact, it's kind of interesting that the next scene in John, you see Jesus in Jerusalem 90 miles away from Cana. May I suggest to you that Jesus did not have perfect earthly parents? We don't know much about Jesus' early family. We don't know much about his parents. We know his mom was a young girl when God approached her and let her know that she would carry the Messiah. We know that 12 years later, they left him behind in the temple. How mature is that? You know, in our society today, there could be criminal charges for doing something like that. You know, Department of Children and Family probably would have had to have some kind of investigation as a result of that. You don't just forget you have a child for 2 whole days. Of course, they assume he's in the crowd, but I don't think we could get away with that. I'm just saying. What do we know about his family? Well, after the incident in the temple, we don't even hear about his father Joseph anymore. We don't know what happened to him. It's a common Christian belief that Joseph may have died, but we have no biblical basis for it. We just simply don't see him in the story anymore. We don't know if Joseph left or was too busy working all the time, or if he was conscripted by the Romans for some major building project, or was arrested, or some unknown reason. All we know is we have an absent father, like so many homes today. All we know is the noticeable absence from Joseph in the gospel narratives. What about his brothers? By the way, many Christians who have Catholic backgrounds, when we talk of Jesus' brothers, they assume those are Joseph's sons, not Mary's. There's no biblical argument for that, okay? More than likely, they were Joseph's and Mary's children. Again, sons, brothers could include both sons and daughters. And you say, well, where do you get a premise from that? You remember in the Old Testament a certain young lady named Hannah? And what was the situation with Hannah? What do we remember about Hannah? Initially, she was childless, barren, okay? And she prayed and God gave her a special child that she did what with that child? Dedicated him to God, gave him back to God. What happened to Hannah after that? She had a whole slew of children after that, all right? God's blessing fixed that, right? So it does make sense that God, having approached Mary after Mary had done for God what he asked of her, God would have blessed her with many children. That is quite likely. So what about those brothers? What would it be like to grow up in Jesus' home? If you ever listen to the comedian Michael Jr., he can have fun with that concept, just imagining what it's like growing up in the home with Jesus. It's quite likely that there was some tension in the home. It's possible that between Jesus' brothers and sisters, they just did not get him. Turn to John chapter 7. That's a good example. John tells us now the feast of the Jews, the Feast of Tabernacle was at hand. His brothers, therefore, again, could be brothers and sisters, therefore said to him, depart from here and go to Judea, that your disciples also may see the works that you are doing. For no one does anything in secret while he himself seeks to be known openly. So they're accusing him of wanting to be known openly. And if you do these things, show yourself to the world. It sounds more like they're egging him on. But just in case it's doubtful, John goes on to say in verse 5, for even his brothers did not believe in him. Now that's family dynamics, all right? Those are family issues. What can we know about Jesus or about Jesus' family? We can make a case for the fact that there might have been a manipulative mother in the mix. There might have been an absent father, or there seems to have been an absent father, and there were definitely non-believing siblings all in the mix. What's my point? My point is this: there is no perfect family. Even Jesus did not have a perfect family. Every family, my friends, has issues. Yes, we learn how to put on a good public face, but our families have problems. This is not to negate the fact that some families are better than others. Some families are more functional than others. Some families are safer than others. Some families are more loving than others. Some families are more resilient than others. But all families have problems. That's just life. In case I'm wrong, did anybody in this room come from a perfect family? Just in case? All right. I see hands moving, but they're not going up. They're doing this thing. Mine was close. Well, praise God if it was good. All right. But all families have problems. Problems are just part of the issue of breathing the atmosphere of this planet. All right? If we're alive, we've got problems. The same people that blessed us are the same people that scarred us. The same people that cherished us are the same people that hurt us. The same people that cheered us on are the same people that at times jeered at us. Family is a mixed bag, and sometimes that bag is all mixed up. Our family issues, my friends, shape us for better and for worse. And this matters because our family issues can empower us or stifle us depending how we process those issues. Those pains from the past have the power to strengthen us or the power to break us. None of us is free of family issues. Everyone has drama or trauma or secrets or shame or dysfunction from their family of origin that impacts who they are all of their lives. So let's face it. While some have good parents, no one has had perfect parents. Some have come close. How many of you, I know I can raise my hand at this one, how many of you who are parents said to yourself, I will never do to my children, you know the rest of it, right? You can fill in the blank. I will never cause my children to experience. And later on, you discover your children have some other trauma that you weren't anticipating, right? Did we intend to hurt our children? Did we intend to traumatize our children? I would hope not. I suspect most people would not. And yet, we still passed on issues. If we go back to our family tree far enough, we have to admit that upline isn't all that great. Go back. Okay, go all the way back where all of us were related once upon a time. Go back to Noah. Great, add a few thousand greats, grandpa. And we discovered that grandpa had a drinking problem. Go up the line a few generations more, and we discover that great, blah, 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 great-grand-uncle murdered our other great-grand-uncle. There's stuff in our family tree. The truth is we don't have to go back that far. Go back one generation, two generations. We hear of stories and we discover things that appall us. And the thing is, as children, our parents are perfect, right? For the first few years, they were perfect. In fact, they were our defaults. If they said it, it was right, even if it was wrong. If they said it, it was right. If they did it, it was right. Do you recall when you discovered, like, ooh, mom and dad may not be right all the time? You recall that feeling, that great disappointment? How could they be wrong? It's impossible. And yet it happened. None of us has a pristine family story. If we think we do, either we or someone near us whitewash the story for us. All right? We are flawed people with flawed pasts, living in a flawed world and making flawed choices. And yet, God loves us. Those family issues of ours can actually equip us, though, to thrive outside of our families. Few make better cases for this argument than, say, Joseph of the Old Testament. Yes, Joseph, the son of Jacob, the child of rival sister wives, the one orphaned at the birth of his baby brother, the one despised by his older brothers, the one coddled and favored and spoiled by his father, the one ultimately rejected, belittled, and betrayed by his brothers. How well can most of us adjust from going to from privilege to prison? How quickly can we overcome the transition from being favored to being a servant? Joseph managed his transition by attributing the events in his life to God. We catch a hint of it when his master's wife tries to seduce him. Take a look at Genesis 39:9. What does Joseph have to say? You know this story. She tries to get a hold of him. She's trying to get with him. He said, I can't do this. I can't. How can I do this great wickedness and sin against God? Joseph sees his life through the perspective of God. He attributes the events in his life to God. Even in the low moments of life, Joseph saw his life as one belonging to God. Though his family had issues, he identified himself with another family. He identified himself with God. My friends, our family issues shape us for better and for worse. How do we turn our family issues into stepping stones for a better future? How do we turn our traumas into triumphs? How do we transform our pains into progress? Well, there are a few things we can do. Number one, as we consider some of the traumas we've gone through, some of the disappointments, some of all that drama we'd rather not have had, let's learn the backstory of what really happened. You do know, all behavior makes sense, right? Have you observed somebody do some stuff and you wonder to yourself, how in the world? Why in the world? How crazy is this? And it doesn't make sense at first. But if you learn the backstory, it all makes sense. All behavior makes sense when we understand the backstory. If we don't understand why people do what they do, then we simply don't know the backstory. That's all that means. The wise man, Solomon, advises us in Proverbs 4:7, says, wisdom is the principal thing, therefore get wisdom. And in all you're getting, get what? Get understanding. Get understanding. Find out the why. Get to know the backstory. Find out what the truth is. How many of you are into Stephen Covey and his 7 habits? Anybody read Stephen Covey and his 7 habits? Anybody remember habit number 5? You should, just by what we're talking about, right? Habit number 5, seek to understand, then to be understood. In other words, before trying to be heard, before trying to get your point across, before trying to establish your argument, try to listen to the other person's point of view. First, seek to understand, then seek to be understood. What caused our parents to do what they did? Try to understand that. Why did they minimize our traumas? Seek to understand. Why did they get so dramatic about other events that weren't so big? Why did they stay in a toxic relationship? Or why did they leave another loving parent? By understanding those who came before, we can make sense of what is happening now. So number one, learn the backstory. Every family has backstories. You know, I have wondered why my parents, why our parents, well, it's only me now, why my parents had their children so late in life. By today's standard, it's not so late anymore. But a few years ago, it was common to have your children in your 20s. My parents were in their upper 30s when we came around. If my parents were alive today, my father would be 96 and my mother would be 93. Now, if your parents are 96 and 93, chances are you are at least retirement age, okay? More than likely, all right? If your parents are up there, you are probably retirement age. I am not retirement age, okay? I wish I were sometime, but I'm not. In fact, all my parents' friends, their children were at least a decade older than me. And I wonder, why? I've always had grown folk for parents, okay? As a child, they felt very old, all right, all my life. And kind of wondered, and then, I kind of look back in the family history, and, the fact that grandma married at age 15, I wonder if that had something to do with it. Grandma married at 15 to a man who was 30 and who had a daughter just a little bit younger than grandma. Do you think those things play into the choices of the next generation? Yeah. As we understand what triggered or what motivated our parents, and we understand their story, we can get a sense of what is going on in our own lives. My friends, some scars are deep. Some traumas are irreversible. Some pains we'll take to our graves. Yet, the second thing we need to do, for our own benefit, we need to forgive. Forgiving can benefit the forgiver more than the forgiven. By forgiving people of their offenses, we lighten our own pain. Sometimes some injuries are so bad, some offenses are so bad, sometimes you have to forgive the person not for their sake, but for yours. Just so it doesn't kill you, you just got to forgive them. Because it's just that deep. There's nothing they can do to unhurt you. And sometimes you have to let it go for your own sake rather than for theirs. By the way, what is forgiveness? What does it mean to forgive? I think I've shared this a few times, but I want to check in and see if we all have the same definition of forgiveness. What is forgiveness? Don't keep bringing it up, okay? That's an example. Do we have a common definition of forgiveness? All right, let's make this our common definition. All right? Forgiveness is forfeiting the right to even the score. All right? Forfeiting the right to even the score. If you slap me, how do I even the score? Slap you back as hard as I possibly can, right? That's how we would even the score. If you punch me, I'm supposed to punch you back. You remember as kids, I don't know, if you had siblings, maybe you remember this, but when you would fight, especially at the younger ages, it wasn't so much about killing each other, it's just about evening the score. So if your sibling punched you once, you would have to punch them once. And if they punch you back, you go back and forth just to keep the score even. And if somebody does like more than once, then it's like it's no fair, right? Now you got to involve the parents. Forgiveness is forfeiting the right to even the score. Sometimes we don't even get, or we don't get even because we can't, right? There are situations we'd like to get even, but we just can't get away with getting even. We don't have the power, we don't have the resource, we don't have what it takes to get even. So what do? We go passive aggressive, all right? We lay low, and what we actually do is called forbearance, all right? That means we're not going to charge you for it now, but as soon as the right opportunity comes up, we're going to cash in, right? If anybody has student loans, if anyone has government student loans, I have reason to believe you should understand the difference between forbearance and forgiveness, right? Forbearance means you don't have to pay right now, but you will later. That's unfortunately what a lot of us do when we don't even the score. You get passive aggressive. Okay, I won't get you now. You just wait. You know, where I grew up in Mattapan in Boston, Massachusetts, common phrase, and I suspect it was common all over the world, common phrase was, I know where you live, right? So like, all right, you got me now, but I know where you live. I'm going to get back. That's called forbearance. It's not what we need. We need forgiveness. We need to forgive. Folk have hurt us inside our home and outside of our home. Can we forgive? Can we not even the score? Sometimes we can be very passive-aggressive about it. I think I shared this story here, but I'm going to do it again because I'm never speaking to the exact same people twice. But I had someone close to me commit a crime against me some time ago. All right? Started pressing charges with the police, but, you know, when you're a blood relative, it's kind of hard, blood thicker than water, dropped it. Okay, thought I had forgiven them, right? But I guarantee you, every time I got a chance to tell that story, I would. Do you know what so-and-so did? Yeah, man, it's just, is that forgiveness? Not a little bit. Not a little bit. All right? So, yeah, you didn't go all the way, or I didn't go all the way, but I found another way to exact toll on that person. My friends, forgiveness is forfeiting the right to get even. It does not mean forgetting. Forgetting is called amnesia. All right? Some folks, forgive and forget. No. That's not sound. It's okay to remember what happened. Just be intentional to not even the score. Let it go. You may forget. And hey, God bless you if you forget. But forgetting the incident is not a prerequisite to forgiving it. Debts that are in forbearance eventually come due. All right? Forgiven debts, they never come due. Joseph, at the end of his father's life, his brothers felt so guilty about what they had done that they had a hard time believing that they could have been forgiven. They knew that Joseph was just forbearing. All right, they felt maybe because Joseph loved his father so much, he wasn't going to get him back. But now that daddy's dead, look out, because there's no safeguard between us and Joseph anymore. So let's take a look at a passage there in Genesis 50. Let's look at how the narrative plays out. We're beginning in verse 15. When Joseph's brothers saw that their father was dead, they said, "Perhaps Joseph will hate us and may actually repay us for the evil which we did to him." So they sent messengers to Joseph saying, "Before your father died, he commanded, saying, 'Thus you shall say to Joseph, I beg you, please forgive the trespass of your brothers and their sin, for they did evil to you. Now please forgive the trespasses of the servants of the God of your father.'" Yeah, right. What are the chances that really happened, right? That conversation really took place. But they give Joseph this line. And what do we see? And Joseph did what? And Joseph wept when they spoke to him. Why? For him, this thing was so far behind them. He had already let it go. Then his brothers also went and fell down before his face and said, "Behold, we are your servants." Joseph said to them, "Do not be afraid, for am I in the place of God? But as for you, you meant it for evil against me, but God meant it for good in order to bring it about as it is this day, so to save many people alive. Now therefore, do not be afraid. I will provide for you and your little ones." And the text says he comforted them and spoke kindly to them. That's the difference between forgiveness and forbearance. Do you realize that Joseph would have had to negate all his blessings in order to get even with his brothers? All the climb to power, he would have had to negate it had he held on to that injury by his brothers. And you have to ask yourself, would it have been worth it? No, it would not have been worth it. My friends, sometimes we negate future blessings when we refuse to forgive. Sometimes we need to forbear until we can forgive, but we need to forgive. Look at how Joseph came around to letting the offense go. Let's go back to verse 20. Look. But as for you, he says, you meant evil against me, but God meant it for good, in order to bring it about as it is this day, to save many people. That takes us to our third point. Joseph interpreted his life through the eyes of God. That, my friend, is called reframing. We need to reframe our family issues. Sometimes all we see are the drama. Sometimes all we feel is the pain. Sometimes all we experience is our loss. And sometimes all we can express is anger. Yet, if we consider God's perspective, we can see life differently. The drama alerts us. The pain sensitizes us. The loss fosters appreciation, and the anger can move us to action. Just because our view is natural to us, it doesn't mean that it's the only view. We need to reframe our history. We need to reframe our families. We need to reframe our lives. We need to reframe through the perspective of God. So let me start the wrap up by saying this. God uses our issues to bless us and others when we see our lives through God's purposes. Go back to verse 21, Genesis 50. What does the text say? Now, therefore, Joseph is speaking, do not be afraid. I will provide for you and your little ones. And what? He comforted them and spoke kindly to them. By being faithful, Joseph found his purpose in his pain. By being faithful, Joseph found his purpose through his pain. By being faithful, Joseph found his purpose for his pain. We all have issues. We come from families with issues. Even Jesus' family had issues. Let's allow God to transform our issues into our graces. Let's allow God to transform our issues into our character. Let's allow God to transform our issues into our strengths. Seek God. Seek understanding. Forgive one another and reframe our past.